It began the night the wind forgot how to blow. Eleanor Crane stood on the crumbling porch of the old Weatherby house, the one her aunt had left her after vanishing without a trace. The trees around it swayed as though underwater, their leaves moving, but the air was utterly still. No sound, no breath. She turned the key in the lock, and the door exhaled. It wasn't imagination. It breathed. A long, shuddering sigh, like lungs filling after years underwater. Eleanor laughed nervously. She had always laughed when frightened, ever since childhood. "All right, old girl," she muttered to the house. "Let's get acquainted." Inside, dust hung in the air like sleeping ghosts. The wallpaper peeled in strips, curling like tongues mid-sentence. The floor creaked with a rhythm that almost sounded like words. That was when she heard it, a whisper beneath her own footsteps. Soft, almost shy. "You came back." Eleanor froze. Her heart pounded against her ribs. "Who's there?" The whisper rippled again, this time from behind the wallpaper itself. The pattern, roses and vines, seemed to pulse, faintly, as if something underneath were breathing through the paper. And then she realized the awful thing. It was breathing in sync with her. Every inhale, every exhale. Eleanor took a step back. The house inhaled with her. She held her breath, and it fell silent. Then, against her will, she laughed again, a shaky, uncertain giggle that echoed through the empty halls. The house laughed too. Not mockingly, not humanly, but it learned her laughter, took it, warped it, and gave it back like a memory that didn't belong to her. And that's when Eleanor remembered what her aunt had written in her final, unfinished letter. The house remembers everything that is said within it, and eventually it learns to speak back. Eleanor didn't sleep that first night. Not because she wasn't tired, no, she was exhausted, but because the house refused to stop talking. Every vent whispered like a mouth pressed against her ear. Faint words. Childlike giggles. The sigh of someone sitting up in bed just beside her. She tried to ignore it, curling under the musty quilt of her aunt's old room. But the house wanted attention. "You never visited. She waited for you. She's still waiting." Eleanor sat up sharply. "Who's waiting?" No response. Just the slow wheeze of something moving through the air ducts. She swung her legs off the bed and froze mid-step. The floorboards beneath her were warm. Warm, as though blood still ran beneath them. She knelt and pressed her palm to the wood. There, a pulse. A steady, rhythmic thump, deep in the house's bones. Eleanor stumbled backward.
No.
No, this is ridiculous. But the house shivered. The walls flexed, just barely, as if the building were inhaling again, pulling her scent into its ancient lungs. And from the vent above the dresser came a new sound, wet, muffled breathing, followed by a whisper so close it tickled her skin. "You shouldn't have come alone." The vent cover rattled. A faint clink of metal against metal. Something was moving behind it. Slowly, a pale fingertip, thin, dust-covered, trembling, pushed through one of the vent slats. Eleanor screamed and fell backward, crashing into the nightstand. The lamp toppled, shattered, light died. The whisper turned into a hiss of laughter. And as the sound faded, the fingertip slipped back into the dark, leaving behind a small, greasy smear on the vent cover. In the darkness, Eleanor's own voice rose unbidden, trembling but loud. "Who are you?" The house answered, not from the vent this time, but from everywhere at once. "We are your silence." The floorboards thumped once, like a heartbeat underfoot. And the house exhaled again, by morning. Eleanor convinced herself it had been a nightmare. A vivid, feverish trick of exhaustion and grief. She brewed coffee in the old kitchen, though every cup in the cabinet was still faintly warm, as if someone had just used them. The smell of burnt sugar and old dust filled the air. The house was quiet. Too quiet. No creaking. No whispers. Just that faint, steady rhythm beneath her feet, like a heartbeat slowed to sleep. She began to explore. The parlor was filled with mirrors, 8 of them, all mismatched, all covered with sheets that had gone yellow with time. Her aunt had been obsessed with reflection, always muttering that mirrors remember the last face they saw. Eleanor tugged a sheet down from the largest one. Dust puffed up like gray smoke. For a moment, her reflection was clear. Tired eyes, unbrushed hair, the faint tremor of a woman who hadn't truly rested in months. Then the reflection blinked. She hadn't. Eleanor stepped back, her heart kicking hard against her ribs. The reflection didn't move. It stared at her with something close to sorrow, and maybe a little hunger. "Don't," she whispered, though she didn't know who she was warning. And then her reflection smiled. Not wide, not cruel, just a slow, deliberate curl of the lips. From the corner of the mirror, fog began to spread, forming faint words across the glass, written from inside. "You used to laugh here." Eleanor's knees weakened. What do you mean?" The reflection tilted its head. Behind it, faint shadows flickered. People, maybe, moving through the mirror's background. A hallway that didn't exist behind her. A figure standing where she wasn't. And then, from the depths of that mirrored world, something knocked, 3 sharp, deliberate raps. Knock, knock, knock. The sound came not from the surface, but from behind the glass. Eleanor staggered back, tripping over a chair. Her own voice broke out, unthinking. "Stop it. Stop copying me." And the reflection answered, this time aloud, in her exact voice, but softer, trembling. "I'm not copying. I'm remembering." The mirror fogged again, and when it cleared, Eleanor's reflection was gone. Only the empty parlor stared back at her. But from somewhere deep in the house, faint and rhythmic, came the sound of something knocking again. This time, 15 beats. One for every mirror in the house. Eleanor left the parlor and refused to look back. Every mirror she passed seemed to shimmer faintly, as though they watched her retreat. She wandered upstairs, clutching her coffee cup like a charm. The house breathed with her again. Inhale, exhale, whisper. The silence between each step seemed to hold a pulse. The hallway upstairs was lined with portraits. Family, she assumed, stern-faced Cranes, staring in sepia tones. Her aunt had been among them, eyes like storm clouds, smile like a secret. But one portrait stood out. It was newer, fresher paint, the oils not quite dry even after years. It depicted a woman with Eleanor's face. Same eyes. Same crooked brow. Even the faint scar on her chin. The plaque beneath it read, Eleanor Weatherby Crane, the one who would speak. Her breath caught. "This isn't real," she whispered. The painted version of her blinked. Eleanor gasped and dropped the cup, coffee spattered across the floorboards like dark blood. The painted lips curved, ever so slightly. Then the portrait exhaled. A faint puff of cold air drifted from its surface, smelling of damp earth and old breath. From behind the canvas came a soft scratching, like nails against wood. Her hands shook as she reached toward the frame. The air around it was colder, wet, almost breathing against her skin. A whisper, faint but distinct, came from behind the paint. "You broke the silence. Now it wants you." The lights flickered. Every portrait along the hallway turned their eyes toward her. Not by movement. No, their painted pupils simply shifted, as if the angles of the paintings warped around her presence. Eleanor backed away. No. No, no, no. But the house exhaled again, louder now, and her aunt's portrait spoke, not aloud, but through the air itself, a vibration that pressed into her skull. "It listens when you laugh, Eleanor. It listens when you breathe. Don't let it remember your scream." And then, from behind the portrait that wore her face, came a wet tearing sound, followed by the slow emergence of a painted hand, glistening with oil and something darker, pushing through the canvas like skin. It reached toward her throat. Eleanor ran. She didn't remember deciding to. Her body just moved, propelled by pure animal panic. She tore down the hall, her boots hammering against the wood. The portrait's eyes followed, their faces rippling as if trapped behind water. When she reached the stairs, she heard it, an awful wet tearing sound from behind her. The painted hand had found air. She stumbled down the steps, slamming into the banister hard enough to bruise. "It's just a dream," she whispered between ragged breaths. "Just my mind." But then her words vanished. No echo. No sound. She tried again. "Hello." Nothing. Her voice was gone, swallowed. The air around her moved, but no sound emerged. The house had eaten her voice. A slow pulse traveled through the floorboards, up her legs, through her ribs. The house was inhaling again, but this time, it wasn't mimicking her. It was feeding. She stumbled into the kitchen, slapping the walls, opening drawers, anything to hear something. The sound of her own panic refused to exist. Even the coffee cup she dropped earlier was still there, but the shattered porcelain was perfectly silent. Not even a clink as she kicked it. And then, faintly, came a hum. It came from beneath the floor. A vibration, not a sound. The house wasn't silent. It was full. Full of every sound it had ever taken. She knelt, pressing her ear to the cold tile. Deep below, like 100 trapped throats humming in harmony, she heard something form a word. Hungry. A cupboard door opened behind her. Slowly. Deliberately. She spun around, still no sound, but she saw the door creak wider, a shadow writhing behind it like smoke in water. Then a spoon lifted off the counter, hovered midair, and the next moment, clang, it hit the floor. That sound broke through everything, shattering the house's silence like glass. All the whispers rushed back at once, 10,000 stolen sounds screaming into being. Eleanor clutched her head as the air filled with shrieks, laughter, sobbing, footsteps, heartbeats, years of sound spilling out at once. And under it all, one voice roared above the rest. "You shouldn't have remembered how to speak." The kitchen light burst. Darkness fell. And somewhere deep inside the house, a door she hadn't seen before slowly opened itself. The darkness, after the light burst, wasn't complete. It moved. Black veins of shadow spread across the walls, pulsing faintly, like the roots of some enormous thing beneath the plaster. Eleanor stared toward the newly opened door at the end of the hall. She had never noticed it before, low, narrow, painted the same color as the wall. A door meant to be forgotten. The air around it shimmered faintly, distorting like heat rising off asphalt. And the sound, oh, the sound, the whispering chaos had stopped, leaving behind a single rhythmic inhale and exhale. The house was breathing through that door. She took a step closer. The wood of the floor moaned beneath her weight, alive again, echoing faintly with the heartbeat she'd felt before. The doorknob was slick, cold, almost wet. When she touched it, she felt a pulse run up her arm, as though she'd grabbed the wrist of a living thing. "Please," she whispered, though whether she meant it as a plea to stop or to continue, she didn't know. The door pulsed once more. Then it opened itself, the hinges screaming like something in pain. Beyond it was a staircase leading down into the earth. The walls were made of packed dirt and old brick, and along the steps hung dozens of small, rusted bells, each one trembling faintly, though not one made a sound. The air was cold, damp, full of rot. And beneath it all came a low voice, not whispering but murmuring, as if someone recited something half-remembered. She spoke. She spoke when all were silent. So silence came to claim her. Eleanor's feet moved without her consent. Down one step, then another. At the third step, one of the bells jingled, soft, faint, but real. The only sound in that cavernous hush. The voice paused. Then, deeper this time, "We remember your words, Eleanor." And from below, she saw it, the faint glow of a figure at the bottom of the stairs. A woman in white, still, waiting. Her face was turned upward, eyes black and unblinking. Her mouth moved ceaselessly, as if speaking a flood of words Eleanor couldn't yet hear. The house inhaled again, and the woman's chest rose in perfect rhythm with it. Eleanor realized, with dawning horror, the house wasn't alive. It was possessed. And the woman below was its voice. Eleanor's breath came shallow and fast, though she barely heard it over the deep, wet pull of the house inhaling through that pale woman below. Her mouth moved in bursts, too fast, too fluid, like she was speaking every language at once. Words scraped against each other, colliding in the dark. Eleanor gripped the banister and took another step down. The bells above her trembled. None dared ring. The closer she came, the clearer the woman's features became, and the less human they looked. Her face shimmered between ages, between identities, sometimes her aunt, sometimes her mother, sometimes a stranger she half remembered from childhood dreams. But the voice, oh, the voice was hers. "You left us," it said. "You left your silence here to rot." Eleanor's heart thudded once, loud enough to echo in her skull. "What are you?" she managed, her throat raw from fear. The woman tilted her head. Her lips didn't stop moving, not even as she answered. The words came from everywhere else, through the walls, through the air, through the beating floor beneath Eleanor's feet. "I am the breath between your words, the echo you forgot to fear." The woman raised her hand. Something writhed beneath her skin, like veins, like roots. She took one step forward. And with that step, the floorboards upstairs shifted. Eleanor heard furniture drag, mirrors crack, doors slam in perfect rhythm with the woman's movement. The whole house moved with her. Eleanor tried to retreat up the stairs, but the door she'd entered through slammed shut above her. She was sealed in, buried in the lungs of this thing. "You shouldn't have come alone," whispered the house again, but this time, the voice came from inside her own mouth. She clamped her hands over her lips, but she could feel something breathing through her fingers, as if the air itself had learned her shape. The woman smiled. "Now you'll speak for us too," she said, and began climbing the stairs toward her. Each step the woman took made the house breathe louder. Paint flaked. Beams groaned. Bells trembled on their hooks. And as she neared, Eleanor realized something else. That the woman's face had stopped shifting. It had become hers. The figure's steps were deliberate. Thud, creak, breath, a terrible rhythm that matched the pounding in Eleanor's chest. When she reached the halfway point of the stairs, Eleanor stumbled backward, tripping over the last step and falling into the dirt of the basement floor. It was soft, too soft, as if something beneath it had been recently disturbed. The woman who wore her face stopped. The glow that clung to her flickered faintly, pulsing in time with the house's breathing. "You can't run from a voice," the woman said. "It waits inside you." The air thickened. Eleanor gagged on it. It tasted like dust and iron, and something sour, like spoiled milk. Then she heard it. A faint sucking sound from beneath her palms. She froze. Slowly, the earth under her fingers began to move. The dirt shifted as if stirred from below. A single, wet crack broke the silence, then another, like the ground yawning open. Eleanor scrambled to her feet. "Stay back," she rasped, though her words felt heavy, like they didn't belong to her. The woman smiled, her smile. "You still think they're your words?" The ground erupted. A black, circular maw opened beneath Eleanor's feet, a vast mouth made of soil, bone, and broken glass. It breathed in once, hard enough to drag air and sound, straight out of her lungs. Every bell on the staircase rang at once, their silence shattered into chaos. The woman's body jerked as if struck. Her face began to split at the edges, flickering between all the forms it had worn before, Aunt Weatherby, the strangers, even the painted version of Eleanor. Eleanor stumbled backward, choking. The air was alive with noise now, whispers, sobs, laughter, and something like a heartbeat made of screams. And from that open mouth in the floor, 1,000 faint voices rose, voices trapped, layered, all speaking at once. "We spoke too loudly. We spoke too long. The house remembers what it consumes." The woman's voice rose above them all, shrill and trembling. "You broke the seal, Eleanor. It can't forget now." The mouth beneath the floor exhaled, and a gust of freezing air blasted through the cellar, blowing out every light. And in the pitch black that followed, Eleanor felt warm breath against her ear. A whisper, not from the house, not from the woman, from herself. "Don't scream. It's listening." The darkness was complete, so absolute it had weight. It pressed against Eleanor's eyes, her tongue, her lungs. Even her heartbeat sounded distant, muffled beneath layers of soil and whisper. She dared not move. The whisper that had come from her own ears still echoed in her head. Don't scream. It's listening. But then came a creak. Not from the stairs. From right beside her. Eleanor froze. A shuffle. A breath. Someone or something was there in the dark with her. She reached out blindly, fingertips brushing cold stone, then something softer. Skin. A face. She yanked her hand back with a stifled gasp. The face hadn't moved, but it hadn't felt alive either. The faintest glow flickered through the pitch. It wasn't light exactly. More like the memory of light, as if her eyes recalled what brightness once looked like. And there, suspended in the gloom, she saw them. Mouths. Hundreds. Mouths of all sizes, scattered across the walls and floor, opening and closing silently. The dirt pulsed as they breathed together, each one mouthing different shapes of words, like a chorus that had forgotten its song. Eleanor backed away until her spine hit the cold bricks of the cellar wall. Her knees trembled. The air shimmered, and the woman, her reflection double, stood just a few feet away, her face a shifting mask of every person the house had devoured. "Do you hear them?" she whispered. "They're not gone. The house keeps what it loves." Eleanor shook her head. I won't be part of this." "You already are." The mouths on the walls began to speak again, this time audible. Words layered on words, jumbled and fractured, yet one phrase emerged, clear and terrible. She spoke when all others went quiet. The voice came from beneath her feet. The ground rippled, and one enormous mouth opened under her, the same vast one that had stolen her breath before. Inside it, she saw faint shapes, faint faces, gasping silently as they sank deeper into the dark. Eleanor screamed, instinct, reflex, and in that instant the air shuddered. The house roared back to life. Every window upstairs shattered. Every mirror screamed. Every bell above the cellar staircase sang in chaos. The woman's voice twisted through it all. "Now it knows your name." And on the final echo of her own scream, Eleanor felt the walls shift around her. Not closing in, but breathing her in. The scream didn't end. It was taken. Cut clean off mid-note, as though the air itself had sealed shut around it. Eleanor stumbled, clawing at the wall. The brick pulsed warm under her palms, throbbing like muscle. Dust rained down, then thickened into threads that clung to her wrists, drawing her deeper toward the wall. "Stop," she gasped, but the word came out strangled, twisted, echoing back in 10 different tones, each one hers, each one older. The mouths on the walls began to chant now, their voices layered and wet. She spoke. She spoke. She spoke. The reflection woman stood at the center of the cellar, smiling faintly. Her hair lifted as though caught in an unseen current. "It's remembering you," she said. "The way it remembered me." Eleanor's vision blurred. The floor heaved beneath her, shifting like the belly of some enormous creature. The mouth that had opened earlier began to widen, the edges cracking and splitting until it reached the walls themselves. She tried to run, but her feet sank into the pulsing floor, ankle-deep, then calf-deep, then to her knees. The ground clutched her like hands. The reflection woman reached out a shimmering hand. "Breathe with it," she urged. "If you breathe with it, it doesn't hurt." Eleanor shook her head violently. "No." The house exhaled. Wind blasted upward from the open mouth below, filling the room with the scent of old blood and perfume. Candles, where had they come from, flared to life along the walls, revealing carvings etched into every brick. Names. Some scratched deep, some fading into dust. At the very bottom, half erased by years of damp, she saw one word begin to carve itself anew. "Eleanor." She screamed again. This time, the sound tore through the room like a blade. The air shimmered, and for the briefest moment, she saw beyond the walls. Saw 1,000 trapped souls pressed into the wood and stone, each mouth open, each whispering the same plea. "Forget us." Then the house inhaled. The air snapped, the candles went out, and Eleanor was gone. Only the echo of her laughter remained, soft, nervous, uncertain, drifting through the empty halls of Weatherby House. Inside the house, there was no time, no sound, no Eleanor. At least, not in the way she had been. When she opened her eyes, she was standing in a room that glowed faintly from unseen light. The walls weren't wood or plaster anymore, but layers of memories, images flickering across them like reflections in water. Everywhere she looked, she saw herself. Talking, laughing, crying. Moments she'd forgotten or never lived at all. The air shimmered with whispered fragments, her own words, replayed, rewritten. "It's only a house. You shouldn't have come alone. Don't scream." They looped around her, circling like moths around a candle flame. Then came a voice, steady, familiar, cold. "You spoke when silence was sacred." Eleanor turned. The reflection woman stood in the corner, her figure wavering like heat over stone. But she was not smiling now. Behind her stretched rows of shadowed figures, faces half-formed, mouths sewn shut. Each one trembled faintly, as if wanting to speak, but forbidden. Eleanor's voice quivered. "Where am I?" "In the house's memory," the woman said. "It keeps every sound it ever swallowed. Every scream, every whisper, every word that broke the quiet." Eleanor took a step closer, her hand trembling. "And you?" The woman's head tilted, her form flickering between 100 faces again. Her aunt, her mother, herself. "I am the first one who forgot how to be silent." Eleanor swallowed hard. "Then how do I leave?" The woman smiled sadly. "You don't. You fade. And when your voice is gone, the house will dream of you." Eleanor shook her head. "No. I won't fade. You already are." She looked down. Her fingertips were turning translucent, the edges of her skin unraveling into mist. Every breath she took pulled more of her into the air, her body becoming a whisper. Desperate, she shouted, "Stop it. Let me go." The walls flared white. For a heartbeat, the entire house paused. And through the light, she heard something impossible. A voice that wasn't hers. A living one, faint and distant, calling from outside. "Hello? Miss Crane? Are you in there?" Someone had come to the Weatherby house. And the house was waking up to greet them. Morning came gray and wrong. The mist hung low, curling through the dead grass like smoke from a smothered fire. At the end of the long drive, a man in a county jacket unlatched the iron gate. His name was Detective Rowe, and he was only here because the locals had complained. Windows rattling in the night, whispers heard clear across the field, the smell of rot thick as fog. He'd laughed it off at first. Now, standing before the Weatherby house, he didn't laugh. The building shifted. Not visibly, he couldn't point to a wall moving, but he felt it. The subtle flex of something alive pretending to be still. "Miss Crane," he called, stepping onto the porch. "This is County Sheriff's Office. You reported to stay here last week." No answer. The boards beneath his boots exhaled. A puff of air brushed his ankle, warm and sour. Rowe froze. "Draft," he muttered, though the air outside was perfectly still. He tried the door. It opened before his hand touched it. A soft sigh rolled from within, the kind that comes after someone has been holding their breath far too long. The interior was dim. Dust drifted in thick sheets. The walls bore faint impressions, handprints, pressed from the inside out. "Miss Crane," he tried again, his voice swallowed by the space. Something upstairs laughed. A woman's laugh. Light, nervous, familiar. He followed the sound up the staircase, each step groaning beneath his weight. The laughter moved ahead of him, retreating down the hall toward a closed door at the end. He reached for the knob. It was warm. Then, "Don't." The voice came from his radio. Static, then a whisper in a woman's tone. Eleanor's tone. "It's awake. Don't speak." Rowe blinked, bringing the radio close. "Who is this?" "Eleanor Crane." "I'm—" A burst of static cut her off. Then, faintly, "It remembers your voice." The radio went dead. From behind the door came a slow, steady inhale. The wood expanded slightly, the paint cracking. Rose stepped back, heart hammering. "This is ridiculous," he said aloud, trying to steady himself. And the door spoke back. Ridiculous. His own word. His own voice. Perfectly echoed. Then the knob turned by itself. The knob twisted twice, slow, deliberate, and the door swung inward. Rose shone his flashlight into the room. Empty. Dust motes danced in the beam. An old dresser. Torn curtains. A single mirror on the far wall. Nothing moved. Still, his heart thudded like a hammer in his ribs. He took one step inside. Click. The door closed behind him. He turned, too fast, and the beam caught movement. The mirror, his own reflection, had stepped forward when he hadn't. He froze. The reflection smiled, his smile, but a second too late. "Miss Crane," he tried, his throat dry. "You here?" The mirror answered. "You here." His stomach dropped. The voice was his, but the rhythm was wrong, stretched like a recording played too slow. He took another step closer, lifting the flashlight. Behind his reflection, he saw someone else in the glass. A woman, pale and still, her eyes wide with terror. Eleanor. Her mouth moved soundlessly, forming words he could barely read. "Don't let it speak you." "What?" he whispered. The reflection opened its mouth. But instead of his voice, or hers, a low, distorted rumble filled the room, like a chorus of breathing reversed. The air grew thick, the smell of earth rising strong and sharp. The walls began to ripple. Paint blistered, bulged. Faces pressed through, silent and shifting. Eleanor slammed her hands against the inside of the mirror. He could see the impact distort the glass like water. Her eyes pleaded with him. "Tell me what to do." Rose shouted. And then he realized. Every mouth in the room had turned toward him. Every warped face in the walls opened wide. "Speak," they said together. "Speak for us." He dropped the flashlight. The bulb shattered. Darkness swallowed him whole. Only the mirror still glowed, faintly, sickly, showing him one last image before the room went black. His reflection reaching out of the glass. Fingers first, then a hand, then a smile that was too wide to ever be his. Rose staggered back, but the mirror leaned toward him, its surface rippling like a living membrane. Behind the wavering silver, he saw Eleanor again. Pale, translucent, trapped in a shifting corridor of light. She raised her hands, palms outward, pleading. "Don't speak." Her voice came through at last, thin as breath. "That's how it pulls you in." But instinct betrayed him. "I'm not afraid of." The moment he spoke, the mirror exhaled. A burst of air thick with dust and old perfume struck him full in the face. The sound of his own unfinished sentence echoed back, repeated, distorted. Of. Each echo grew louder until it wasn't an echo at all but a summons. The floor tilted. The glass bulged outward, slick and cold, and a dozen hands pressed against it from the inside, his own hands, multiplying. He clawed at the doorknob, but it dissolved beneath his grip, turning soft like wax. The room groaned, the boards beneath him flexing in rhythm with the inhale of the house. "Breathe," whispered the voices. "Be remembered." Rose's chest tightened. He couldn't stop himself, he breathed with it. The walls convulsed. A final, sharp gust yanked him forward. He fell, through the glass, through himself, and landed in a place of sound and shadow. Eleanor caught him before he struck the ground. Her hands were half light now, fading at the edges. He stared around them. Corridors made of whispering air, every surface alive with flickering images of the living and the dead. "What is this?" he gasped. "The inside of the house," she said. "It's memory." "Then we're not gone yet." All around them, shapes began to stir, those half-faces, half-voices she'd seen before. Only now they looked awake. "It's listening," Eleanor whispered. "If we stay silent, it can't finish the memory." Rose swallowed. The air itself seemed to wait for the next word. And from far above, somewhere in the waking world, the house began to draw in another breath. It was not finished feeding. The air inside the house's memory pulsed, hot, cold, hot again, like a living heart remembering how to beat. Eleanor and Ro crouched in the flickering corridor of voices. Every whisper rose and fell with the same rhythm. Inhale, exhale, remember. The sound grew heavier, filling their ears, their lungs, their thoughts. Ro clutched his head. "It's inside me," he choked. Eleanor shook him, her hands phasing in and out of solidity. "Listen to me. We can't fight it. We have to hold still. No breath. No word. No sound." He nodded, barely, and pressed his lips together. The voices swelled around them, 1,000 murmurs seeking a new tongue. "Speak for us. Breathe for us. Be us." The floor beneath them began to crack. Beneath the splintering surface yawned a pit, black and bottomless, full of the soft movements of unseen mouths. Eleanor glanced down and saw the faint glow of her name carved into the dark, half buried beneath newer letters. Her aunt's. Her mother's. And now Rose. She took his hand. He squeezed back once, eyes wide with terror. "Hold your breath," she mouthed. The house inhaled. The force of it pulled at their hair, their clothes, their skin, dragging them toward the pit. Eleanor felt her body unraveling again, sound stretching thin inside her like a scream waiting to be born. She looked at Ro one last time. He was still silent, eyes clenched shut, refusing to give the house what it wanted. So she did it for him. She exhaled. Her voice poured out, sharp, defiant, shattering the rhythm of the house's breath. The whispers screamed back, dissonant and furious. The walls convulsed, and the air turned inside out, an explosion of every stolen sound bursting free at once. Light, real light, split through the darkness. Ro felt himself thrown upward, into air, into cold morning. He landed outside, coughing, mud clinging to his coat. Behind him, the Weatherby house wheezed once, long, shuddering, and fell utterly still. No wind, no whisper, just the smell of wet earth. He turned toward the door. It hung half open. For a moment he thought he saw her, Eleanor, standing inside, calm, translucent, smiling faintly. Then she lifted a finger to her lips. Shoo! The door closed on its own, and from deep within the walls came one soft sound, not a breath, not a word, but the gentle, rhythmic beating of a heart, waiting for the next voice to disturb its silence.